Since the last time we spoke, Ukraine and by extension NATO have invaded Russian territory in the Kursk region. And you have recently written a piece about this incredibly dangerous escalation that is now into and close to the end of the second week. I wanted to ask you, one, to discuss what your findings and your reporting on this pretty monumental event. And also, if you could tie this into something that I've been very concerned about, and I think the rest of the world is, including Russia, is how this escalation kind of marks another step forward to an unthinkable conflict, direct conflict between NATO and Russia.
Yeah. Well, from the beginning, many of us independents, we had two key questions. Was the Ministry of Defense in Russia caught napping in an astounding way? Or was this more or less engineered or re-engineered to set up a lethal trap for Ukraine? So these were my first thoughts from the beginning. Then I start talking to some people, and then I asked some of my very good sources in Moscow directly. Said, look, I know you cannot be compromised. I know this is extremely sensitive matter of national security in Russia, but as much as you can tell me in a one sentence or so, more than appreciated. And they volunteered. And in fact, one of them told me that he will give me a full briefing when I'm back in Moscow. I'll be back in Moscow in a week or so. So I'm eagerly expecting this full briefing in detail. It's a very, very, very complicated affair because it involves what goes on inside the Ministry of Defense. They are clans, it's tribal, they are in shock. There are people who are against Belousov, the new Minister of Defense. There's the Shoigu gang, the Gerasimov faithfuls. It's very complicated. And for all of us, it brings back what Prigozhin was saying all the time. And he was, to a larger extent, correct when he was talking about internal corruption in the Ministry of Defense. Of course, this happens everywhere. In the Pentagon, is in fact intergalactic internal corruption. In the German Ministry of Defense, it's the same thing. We don't know about what happens inside China because it's too opaque. And in Russia, as far as we can tell, and as far as intel sources who have their moles inside the Ministry of Defense can tell, it's a very, very complicated affair. We all know there is a sort of purge going on, like Putin feels now with this new government that he's free to finally reorganize things internally in the Ministry of Defense. A lot of generals and all of the old guard have been directly accused of corruption. Shoigu, we can say very, very diplomatically that he was sort of kicked upstairs. And then, of course, there's Gerasimov. Gerasimov is, let's put it this way, a first-class old-school general, but maybe not so good when it comes to fighting this new hot war the way it is developing in Novorossiya and now in Kursk. For instance, a lot of these, I would say, hawkish intel factions, some inside the Ministry of Defense and some interconnected, they think that the chief of general staff should be General Surovkin, General Armageddon Surovkin, which he's the guy who basically coordinated that legendary three-tier Russian defense in Novorossiya. Well, according to what I heard, it's really, really complicated inside. And there is no definitive smoking gun. There are reports, internal reports confirmed by intel sources that key reorganization of certain brigades and commanders before the Kursk invasion. Don't forget that the Russians have excellent, not only internal sources and moles in Bankova, in Kiev, but several, let's say, strata of the Ukrainian forces, but also first-class electronic surveillance and aerial surveillance of everything that happens in Ukraine. So obviously they saw a movement of troops near the Kursk border. They knew what this would entail, and that's the point where they made that fateful decision. Should we let it happen? And then we're going to immediately reorganize the whole battlefield scenario according to our own aims. For that, we still don't have a smoking gun, but this looks like the privileged scenario. They were not caught completely unprepared. It's absolutely impossible, considering the level of information that they have on everything that happens in the military and in the intel services in Ukraine. So I would say that this medium to long term, after the Kursk problem is solved, would necessitate a serious internal inquiry and a serious investigation in the Ministry of Defense. Will that happen? We don't know. What we do know is that Belousov is on a mission to finish off with corruption inside the Ministry of Defense. So heads will roll. We still don't know which heads and for what, but that's inevitable. And the fact that there are serious factions inside the Ministry of Defense that are anti-Belousov also tells us a lot, right? So in a nutshell, an extremely sensitive national security matter for Russia. For the moment, they turned it around, and we can say that Putin's decisions let's say in the first 48 hours after they identified what was going on in Kursk, turned the whole thing around because it installed in practice a counter-terrorist operation. In fact, what's going on in Kursk now is a counter-terrorist operation, a take no prisoners ethos, where if you don't surrender peacefully, which is the case of many Ukrainians for the past few days, you're going to be eliminated, and that's it. Take no prisoners. So the choice is yours. And of course, Russia will prevail, and it's going to take time. It's a very, very complicated. It will imply battles for villages and small cities as well. This thing can go on for weeks or even months, but they will prevail. And the investigation, of course, is not going to happen in the next few weeks or months. Maybe it will happen only next year. But of course, in terms of offering a gift for Russia, it is an enormous gift because it is a suicidal mission. Also, very important, we still don't have a smoking gun. But let's say with 90% of certainty that this was masterminded by NATO, Anglo-American NATO experts. Our friend Andrei Marchanov said they cannot even do a basic math equation, and they have never seen a real war in front of them. So these are the people who masterminded this operation, right? And of course, it's the Hail Mary pass of this dwindling, sweaty sweatshirt regime in Kiev, which is being thrown under the bus as we speak. Already have a list of candidates for the post-Zelensky. Something's going to happen before the American elections, most probably. They simply cannot. The Americans must have something to show before the American elections, apart from the complete evisceration of the Donbass front. You know, and they thought, okay, Kursk, it's perfect. We can sell it as a Ukrainian victory, which is the Anglo-American mainstream media is bravely doing it on an everyday basis, right? That fantastic Ukrainian victory in Kursk. But very, very important, names. Who is in charge of what's going on in Kursk at the moment? Not Gerasimov. Two names. Dyumin, special advisor to President Putin, which is reporting directly to President Putin, is the overseer. And the overseer of the counter-terrorist operation is the FSB's Bortnikov. So these are the names. These are the guys in charge of Kursk. It's not the Russian Ministry of Defense. And this, for all of us, I would say, speaks lots of Tolstoy volumes, to say the least.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think all of these are great points and so important in terms of the information that we need to understand what's going on. And I wanted to follow up with the situation on the front line. And as you said, this could very well be a huge gift to Russia, because even the Western mainstream media says all of Ukraine's best are going into this operation.
Yes.
But this operation is in Russian territory. And while you said it's very complicated, it also means that you have thousands of Ukraine's best troops just sitting there. And even The Economist is saying that Putin is going to punch back and punch back very hard. And it's already kind of playing out on the front lines where there's panic about collapse in places like Pokrovsk. So talk about this development. And again, you know, it seems to be leading to that very dangerous confrontation, given that while we don't have official confirmation, NATO is essentially spearheading every Ukrainian operation, and probably this one.
Exactly. The Russian tactic in Kursk was absolutely classic from the beginning. We decimate the head of the snake that invaded Kursk. In fact, the top commanders of the top brigades, they were all exterminated within the first 48 hours. We attacked them in the rear, and everybody in between will be caught and will be encircled, and there will be a cauldron or a lot of mini cauldrons in Russian territory, in Kursk. We are approaching this stage of the battle. So it's more or less inevitable that the lines of supply and the lines of communication for the Ukrainians are doomed. And what really matters for the Russians is that in parallel to all that, without transferring troops from the Donbass front line, they are advancing very, very fast to Pokrovsk. And if they take it, it's absolutely essential, because they're going to cut the main hub for the supply lines that go to the Ukrainians still controlling parts of Donbass, from Kiev to the parts of Donbass. So Pokrovsk may fall in the next, let's say, could be a few days or maybe 3-4 weeks maximum. That would be what, mid-September, before late September. Perfect. The timing couldn't be better. It would be like 1 month before the BRICS summit in Kazan. You know, so in terms of timing for the Russians, everything is perfect. They have two very, very important geoeconomic and geopolitical forum next month. I'll be there. I'll be following both. Early September is the Vladivostok forum, and mid-October is the Holy Grail, the BRICS forum in Kazan. So the Russians have everything necessary to arrive at the BRICS forum with a lot of solutions on the battlefield regarding Ukraine, which they can show to the other BRICS. The discussions on de-dollarization are progressing. Of course, another extremely complicated dossier, but they are advancing little by little. I'll have a briefing for you guys next time, starting with my return to Russia next week. And of course, this will be less than 1 month before the American elections in early November. And you can imagine the desperation on the American side, looking at what's happening in the black soil of Novorossiya everywhere. Thus, the extremely worrying possibility, which is already telegraphed by those Kiev goons, was picked up by everybody. A nuclear attack or a dirty bomb against Zaporizhia or Kursk or both, which this would be the post Hail Mary pass, the definitive Hail Mary pass of this regime before they collapse completely. So for all of us, this is even more worrying because it fulfills more or less the expectation that we had at the beginning of summer, that this would be an incendiary summer for all practical purposes. I wrote a column that the title, if I remember well, is The Summer of Living Dangerously. We are right in the middle of the summer of living dangerously, including the possibility of a dirty bomb attack by the Ukrainians, which is something completely absurd and stupid, because if they launch a dirty bomb, it will be traced back to them. And, analysis will inevitably reveal that this was an Ukrainian dirty bomb. But this, I would say, this gives to all of you the out of control level of dementia of these people in Bankova, in Kiev. Of course, supported by those mathematics deprived NATO generals. That's where we are at the moment. So the summer of living danger has not even started yet. And the summer ends next month.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of it seems like the move here is that there is this desperation. And as you said, there's plans that are being revealed or at least speculated upon, but it's quite likely that Russia knows that were plans that were being undertaken by Ukraine, of course, always with NATO direction, on these nuclear power plants. And so, I mean, maybe finally to close on the Kursk question, how do you believe this will affect the multipolar world? Of course, Russia is one of the major leaders, if not the major leader, of this new emerging world order. And, now we have a situation where there was these talks about secret peace talks that Russia, of course, have smacked down as false, but...
And they are, as far as
Russia,
we know.
yeah, but Russia is saying absolutely no peace talks from here moving forward. So how does Kursk fit into this overall trend? Because it seems like the desperation is leading closer and closer to a direct, almost like nuclear confrontation between NATO and Russia, and by extension, the multipolar world.
Well, we can say that in a sense, Putin may be thinking of applying a parallel Sun Tzu maneuver to what the Iranians are doing with the Talmudic genocidals in Israel and Gaza. Leave them waiting, strategic ambiguity, not telegraphing our moves, war of nerves. This is completely rattling, destabilizing Israel. And if Russia does something similar, apart from what they do actually on the ground in Novorossiya, which is slow, advanced Russia style, supported by a tsunami of artillery, crawling, but conquering one village every day or every 2 days or every 3 days. But in terms of, okay, if you try another red line provocation, we have not even answered for Kursk yet. And if you try another one, which will be the dirty bomb, get ready. But get ready for what? Nobody knows. Strategic ambiguity once again, which seems to be a very good strategy when you're dealing with lunatics in Israel and Gaza and in Kiev, NATO. It's different brands of lunatics with different ideological penchant and different levels of a cosmic ideological dementia, but still lunatics. And in desperation. Desperation on both corners. Desperation, total desperation in Tel Aviv, total desperation in Kiev, and I would say total desperation in Brussels at the headquarters of NATO in Brussels. The Americans, of course, they are looking at the whole thing far away, as they are not directly involved. Let's see, theoretically, de facto they are, but theoretically they are not, because this is from the point of view of the Americans, this is an European war. This is Slavs killing Slavs, very far away. The other, they don't care. And the main victims will be Europe, not the US. So this is the perfect war, if it keeps going this way, from an hegemonic American point of view. The problem is, in terms of what they're going to sell to the electorate in November, there's nothing to sell. The only thing in front of them is a massive NATO defeat. And everything that the Democrats have been doing during this, let's call it Biden combo administration, because Biden was never the president of the United States for the past 3.5 years. He was the Biden combo, has led to this, right? So there's nothing to sell. And now that Kursk is going down and will go down in a matter of weeks, even the Hail Mary pass, they cannot sell it. So that's why the level of desperation is reaching a crescendo, where we can have an absolutely crazy decision by the Americans, by these silos in the deep state that are running policy. Okay, let the dogs of dementia roll for good, and that's of course is the dirty bomb option, right? It's look, the more we look into it, how did we come to this? How did the whole planet let things get to this point? But when we look at West Asia and we see the genocide still going on live in front of everybody and nothing happens, apart from this pitiful ceasefire negotiation without the Palestinians, which is beyond a joke. Can you imagine a ceasefire negotiation with Qatar, Egypt, and the US and Israel? It doesn't even qualify as a joke. And the Americans will be trying to sell this as a ceasefire, a real ceasefire.
Yeah.
Look, not even Kafka, Danny, would be able to script something like this.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.